Okay, let's work on setting the status of an idea. So we already have this dialog here, so let's go ahead and work on it. So only admins should be able to do this, so let's start with that. If you need a full-fledged package to help you do this, I highly recommend the Spotty package you can see here. However, for our use case, we just want to check if a user is an admin, so we'll just add something to our user model. So let's do that first. User model. Let's create a new method that checks if we're an admin. So let's say is admin, and we can do something like returning if a user, given their email, is in this array. So here we can just specify a list of users that are supposed to be admins. So I'm just going to add Jeffrey because he's going to be the admin if this app goes into production. And I'll add myself too for testing purposes. Okay, so I added myself and Adrian as well so he can take a look over it. And now we want to conditionally show this button as well as the dialog only when an admin is logged in. So let's do that. So I believe this is in the idea show Livewire component and it's called set status. So here it is. So I'm going to move this into its own Livewire component. So this whole button along with the dialog, just so it's separated out from this idea show component. So idea show, if you don't remember, is what's responsible for mostly the voting functionality and showing this. And if we add too much functionality to it, then it could feel like it's doing too much. So let's go ahead and make a new component. PHP artisan livewire make, let's call it set status. And let's move all of this markup in idea show. So this, grab all of this. And let's say livewire set status. Okay. And we have to pass in an idea as well. So let's do that. Okay. And let's go to set status. Let's paste this in. Okay. And let's accept that in the component. So set status. Let's say public idea. And let's make a mount method here to accept it. So say mount, accept the idea, and set it here. Okay. Let's make sure to import idea, and let's see if it still renders correctly. And it does. Cool. So first, let's only show this if the user is an admin. So we can do that in the idea show component. So we can use that is admin method that we just made, but we also have to check if the user's logged in. So let's start with that. We can use the auth directive. So right now it should not show because I'm not logged in. Okay. And now let's check the condition to check if the user is an admin. So let's go here. Let's say if auth user is admin, so that method we just made, then show it. Okay. If you just want one conditional, you can get rid of this auth directive and say auth check here and do an and like this, but I'm okay with using the auth directive. Okay. So now let me log in as someone who's not an admin. So let me just grab a user from here. So let's try this user here. Let me copy this. Let's log in as this person, and it still should not show. And then we'll log in as an admin after to see if it works. So this person, let's log in. Let's go to the show page, and it still doesn't show. So let's try an admin now. Log in. Go back to the show page, and now it shows. So it does work. Okay, so next we can make this dynamic. So right now all of the statuses are hard coded. So if you take a look at set status, you'll see that all of these statuses are coded in here, which is fine. But if you want to make it more dynamic, we already have this in the database. So we can pass in all the statuses from our set status livewire component here. Do something like statuses equals status all or something like that. But I'm not going to do that. I'll show you why. So after we grab the statuses, we can loop over one of them. So let's see which one is one. So from here we can do for each and just say like status name for this. You know what I mean. But I'm not going to do that because if you look at the design, we do have the corresponding status color for the radio button here. Again, it's a very small feature and only admins can see it, but I kind of like it. So we need to take that into account if we use a for each. So for example, for each status, they are different here. So we have text gray 600 for the first status, text purple, text yellow, and so on, text green. So if we were to make it dynamic and use a for each, then we'd have to grab these classes as well. So we can do something similar to what we did before in the statuses and have another column here, say classes admin, and then put it in there, and that would work. Or we could just leave it hard-coded in here for each status, and that would work as well. So I'm just going to leave it the way it is now since it's already in here. But the downside to this would be if there is a new status added, we'd have to update this, which isn't very hard to do anyways. Okay, so I need to change the value of these. So these values have to correspond to the status. So it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, I already have. 4 is closed and 5 is, actually no. 1, 2, 3, 4 is implemented and 5 is closed. Okay. So now we want to keep track of when the user selects a new status. So we can put a wire model on these inputs. So wherever there is an input type equals radio, we can add a wire model. Okay. So I'm going to add it here right after the input. Wire model equals, let's call it status or status ID. Status is fine. Okay. And let's make sure to add that on our component as well. So set status. Let's add a new one for status. And initially we want to set this to be whatever the status of the current idea is. So we can do that in here. So say this status equals idea status ID. Actually, let's set it to this idea here. Okay. And now if I did that right, the correct status should be selected here whenever we go to this page. So right now it should be open. Let's try a different idea. Let's go back. Let's try one that's not open, so in progress. So it's in progress and it is selected. So it does work. Let's try one more. Implemented and it is selected. Okay, now let's work on changing the status of the actual idea. So let's put a listener on the submit event. So let's go here, set status. Let's look for the form here. And let's do wire submit. And let's prevent the default action. And let's call a set status method. So let's go to that. And let's make that method here. Set status. So first, let's make sure to add the permissions here. So we have to be an admin to access this method. So we can do an if. Let's check if we are an admin. So if auth user is admin or if is not an admin. Okay. Then we can, let's use the abort helper and let's say response HTTP forbidden. Okay. And let's make sure to import response. Okay. Actually, I think we also have to check if the user's logged in as well. So we have to add one more condition here. If not, auth check. And then we can do an or here. Okay, so now let's update the status of the idea. So here, remember we have wire model and that's updating every time the user changes the status here. and that's bound to this variable here. So we can just do this idea status ID equals this status. Okay, and let's make sure to save the idea. So this idea save, and let's see if that works. So let's go here. I'm going to go back to the first idea. So this one here, it's on open right now. Let's change it to considering, update. Okay, so the UI didn't change, but let's see if it actually changed in the database. So let's go to ideas. Let's go to this one. And you see the status ID is 2, so it did work. So if we refresh the page, it should stay on considering, or you could see a change here, and it is considering. So let's do it one more time. Let's change it to in progress, update, check the database, and it does change to 3 here. Okay, so why is the UI not updating? So as we change this, we want this to update. So it's not updating because this part of the UI lives on the parent component. So it is changing in here, which is a child component, but we need to notify the parent component that something has changed. So let's go ahead and make an event to do this. So after we save it, let's do this, emit, and let's emit a status was updated event. And in the parent, so that would be idea show, let's listen for that event. So let's put it here. Let's say protected listeners, and let's listen for that event. So status was updated. So let's grab this. Let's make a method, and let's put it right here. And all we want to do, actually it should be a method. Okay. So all we want to do is update the idea. So we can do this, idea, refresh. Okay. So let's see if it actually updates the status now, or the UI for the status. So let me refresh. It's in progress. Let's change it to implemented, update, and it does work. Cool. Closed. And the UI is updating now. Okay. So we also want to hide this dialog after the status changes. So we can actually listen for the event in the front end as well. So let's do that. So let's go to our set status, and up here where it's responsible for showing and hiding the dialog, let's listen for that event. So we can do X init and add some JavaScript here. So let's do window.livewire.on and just listen for the event. So status was updated. Actually, let me put single quotes here. And let's do a callback, and we can just set is open to false, and that should close it after the status is changed. So let's try that out. Refresh, set status, implemented. Let's see if it changes this and closes the dialog. And it does. Cool. Let's try again, considering, and everything is working. So ideally, I'd like to have a success message or a notification of some sort that pops up, maybe in the top right, or I believe in the Laracast form, it pops up in the bottom right. And we'll do that eventually. I think I want to dedicate an entire chapter to that. So we need that in other places as well. For example, after we add an idea, or after we, say, delete a post or mark a post as spam. So yeah, I think we'll call it on this video. In the next video, we'll test it as always. And after that, we'll work on this notify all voters feature. And for this comment, we'll work on that once we have comments working for the ideas. So let's go ahead and make a commit. This is episode 32. Git add, git commit, episode 32, admin, set status.